If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe. Here you have just two Hollywood figures just looking at how they each dealt with having an anti-Semitic dad. You have Gibson, who continues the anti-Semitism, and you have Schwarzenegger, who disavows it, and today is one of the foremost figures speaking out against anti-Semitism publicly. What a difference.
Well, I just want to thank you, Jacob, for I knew I'd have a delightful conversation with Rabbi. Thank you.
In No Shratet, a very small document that emerged out of Second Vatican Council that said we should remove the liturgical language from the Good Friday services, which referred to the treacherous Jew. It was in the liturgical services of the Roman Catholic Church, and well, I mean, that was in my lifetime. I was alive. I was a kid. That second Vatican Council by Pope John the 23rd, he did not survive to see the completion, but he was called the Papa Bueno, the good Pope. He was a nice guy compared to his predecessor.
What? Yeah, right. And there were
not a threshold.
And in the course of Christian history, there were popes who took efforts to try and restrain the extremity of Christian anti-Semitic violence, but the Christian on the street, was dripping with hatred, and the Pope having to hold back the violence of the ferocity of the violence against Jews was
right. And all the church fathers held this view. I just want you, the viewer, to understand that what you hear James and I describing is not the ranting of people who don't have a favorable view of the Christian religion. All the church fathers, every one of them, from Clement all through, all the reformers held this view. This is not a view that you're hearing here that's sort of inconsistent with what Christians taught. All the reformers believe. Calvin believed this. Bucer, very important companion of Luther, those are first generation reformers. They all held this view. Of course, things have changed in the last 2 centuries. Certainly, dispensationalism had an effect on the way Protestant evangelical Christians thought about Jews. It certainly did, but it's not the text that would bolster this kind of revision, right?
No, I think it was events. Being American, I think there was certain religious tolerance that was enforced by having a no state religion, and that created, I think, a degree of religious tolerance that was unprecedented in human history. In my country, the thing I am most proud of in American history is the degree, at least, not that there hasn't been terrible hatred and bigotry, it's the degree of tolerance that sort of created a haven. And Americans, I think, grew to have a different attitude about Jewish people. I know my family did, because they lived side by side with them. They worked with them. Nothing melts bigotry more than working with someone, seeing them as your neighbors and stuff. And then the Holocaust. The guilt of the 20th century was just shattering to many Christians. And you could see in Hollywood, mind you, compare the difference between, say, the silent version of King of Kings, Cecil B. DeMille did in 1926, and then the 1960s biopics of Jesus, King of Kings and Greatest Story Ever Told. The stories that we just indicated, like from Matthew, taken out. The anti-Semitic elements. Whereas in the silent version, where you have Cecil B. DeMille's silent version, you've still got the hook-nosed, stereotypical greedy Jew rubbing his hands in glee when Jesus is being crucified. Whereas in the 1960s, post-Holocaust, they've taken much of that material out.
I remember when The Passion of the Christ came out, and I knew we were in trouble because, who produced this film? The great luminary of American cinema, whose father was a Holocaust denier, a vicious anti-Semite. Mel Gibson himself belongs to an iteration of Roman Catholicism that rejects the Second Vatican Council. These are very scary Catholics.
Church in Santa Barbara, California, which is
Right.
ultra-conservative and rejects Vatican II, in effect.
Right.
And of course, the famous, if the viewers don't remember, when he was arrested for a DUI incident, he spouted, and they've got it on tape, spouted
Right.
ugly anti-Semitism. And
Right.
this is the guy who gave us Passion of the Christ.
Right.
You know,
So we knew, we knew this was a nightmare that was going to come out, and when it did, it was worse than I thought. And I was sitting there going, first of all, this is not Aramaic. I don't know why they didn't.
that's the thing.
Totally.
It has Aramaic with subtitles, but it's not faithful Aramaic.
The Aramaic was fake. I'm going, this is totally fake. But he didn't have to worry if they didn't get it right. You didn't pronounce it right because they knew that there would be very few people in the audience who'd be able to go, well, you didn't say that right. But I'm going, we're in huge trouble. And I want to just something I've never shared in my life. I wanted to pass this on right here. I can think of two Hollywood figures, Mel Gibson and Arnold Schwarzenegger. Two Hollywood figures and two very interesting fathers. So Mel Gibson, father, vicious anti-Semite, Holocaust denier, just a horrible person. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, a Hollywood figure, who he discovers that his father was a Nazi. Schwarzenegger's Austrian. And look at the difference between these two people. I don't want to talk about their personal lives for a moment. None of that. I just want to just look at these two. And this is something I think about often, but I don't think I've ever said on air. So Mel Gibson goes in the path of his dad with his hate, and as you described, in his personal life and how he put that film together. And Arnold Schwarzenegger discovers his dad was a Nazi. He actually asked a Holocaust institution that, studying my father, I want to know if he was a Nazi or not. And he's told he was a Nazi. And he disavows his father, condemns his father, donates $5 million to the Wiesenthal Center, donates $5 million, and has devoted his life to attacking hateful anti-Semitism. So you're not born into, you can make a decision. And here you have just two Hollywood figures, two leading men in Hollywood, Hollywood figures who, just setting aside their personal life, just looking at how they each dealt with having an anti-Semitic dad. You have Gibson, who continues the anti-Semitism, and you have Schwarzenegger, who disavows it, and today is one of the foremost figures speaking out against anti-Semitism publicly. What a difference. If you enjoyed this program, please like and subscribe.
אדון עולם אשר מלך בטרם כל יציר נברא לעת נעשה בחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא